Yeah, and you mentioned that after a while, you find the benefits waning a little bit. I always liken fasting to kind of going to the gym and doing a certain exercise, and it's great to do that exercise sometimes. But maybe you're going and doing lunges, and you're like, "This is amazing. My body's responding really well to it. I feel strong." But after a while, your body's like, "I don't want to keep doing lunges. Maybe I want to have a rest day, or maybe I want to do something else." And so fasting is kind of similar to that, where it's really great for strengthening the body, and it's needed. But you can do too much of it sometimes. Hi,
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great, thank you. Thanks for coming on board with me, Alina. I really appreciate that you threw your hat in the ring there. It's lovely to meet you.
Yeah, it's great to meet you too. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Let's get to know each other. It's unusual sometimes when I stumble across people like you and then they come on the podcast straight away. I
Yeah.
typically take a fair bit of time to sort of get to know someone, and I kind of develop, I don't know if you do this as well, but if you listen to someone long enough, you develop a little bit of a relationship and a bit of a connection, right? And so when it
Yeah.
kind of has that, um, I don't know, the right sort of gestation, it simmers enough, and then you're like, you know what, I've definitely marinated in this field for long enough, and it's
Yeah.
time to kind of like take that next step. So that's how I feel. But I have listened to a couple of your interviews, and I really like what I hear. So it's great to have you on.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm so excited to be on.
That's fantastic. Well, let's get to know each other. Like I said, I would love to know more about your background. I know we're going to talk about gut health, and there's a bunch of questions that I want to ask, which are typically related to probably my own problems and our of experience. But yeah, share with me your background and sort of how you got into this space.
Yeah, I've had so many gut issues my entire life. Things ranging from constipation to rashes, unexplained eczema. And I was given so many different answers, things from even change your laundry detergent, that might be what's causing the eczema. And I did all of that and it wasn't going away. And I was told constipation is pretty normal. Not everyone has a daily bowel movement. Some people go sometimes a few times a week, some people go every day. We're all different and all of that is okay. It's not okay. You're supposed to have daily bowel movements. But we're kind of told these things that it's okay that your digestive system is not functioning properly. It's okay that you have maybe some eczema. It's really common. A lot of people have eczema, don't worry about it. But
Mhm.
these are all signs of a distressed gut. This is your gut telling you something is going on, and the only way that I can communicate with you is via symptoms. And so when we have these symptoms, when you have rashes, when you have headaches all the time, you have fatigue, you have things going on, that is your body's way of communicating with you that, hey, something is going on internally, and I'm trying to let you know by showing you that
Mm,
I'm in pain or something is not there. And so, really, I had those issues my entire life. But again, what do I know? I'm just a kid, a teenager, then in my 20s. So I'm like, all right, well, if these doctors against gastroenterologists are saying everything's fine, it wasn't until I had my second son and he had severe constipation as a baby and toddler. And I took him to the pediatrician, and the pediatrician said, just give him Miralax. Constipation is very common, especially in younger kids. A lot of kids have it, and parents give them Miralax, and the problem goes away. And
mm,
I said, but that's not really addressing why my child is constipated. Should we run a food sensitivity test? Should we see if maybe it's a food causing this? Is it environmental? And all of that was just kind of brushed off. It's not really a concern. Um, and I wasn't content with that answer. I wanted to know what's going on with my child. I want to fix it, not just mask the pain, but continue giving him something that's potentially irritating his gut. That didn't make any sense to me. And so I really said, how can I get what certification can I get? What can I do? What's a fast track? Something I can do to get done where I can order labs for my own kids, because I need to know how to test my own kids at home when I want to, how I want to figure out what's going on. What does their blood show? What does their stool show? How can I read those labs to know how to address my own kids? And so, really, that was the push into me becoming a functional diagnostic practitioner was really my second son, just wanting to test him, just wanting to know what is going on with him. And
Wow.
from there, I can't tell you how many parents came up to me and they said, my child also has constipation. We gave them Miralax. What do we do? What recommendations do you have? And I realized, oh, a lot of people have this need. There are a lot of parents who are left feeling just this emptiness. And then, from there, I realized that, oh, I also had gut issues my entire life. But I don't know if you're a parent, but when you are, that's all you see. You kind of put your problems on the back burner. You don't really focus on, me and my problems. It's more, how can I address my kid? But from there, I realized, oh, I also had all of these gut issues. And these were all cries for help from my gut. I just didn't know any better. And so now that I do, I'm kind of work with people who have a lot of these same symptoms that I had for so many years. And now we address it before it develops into something a lot more serious. And, unfortunately, we are seeing a lot more diseases on the rise, a lot of health issues on the rise, mental health issues are increasing, mental health is declining. And so all of these things are tied to the gut. And so it's very, very important that you understand kind of what's going on inside your body and not ignore those symptoms that we often do. We're like, oh, I'm just so tired every day. I don't know what it is. I think I need like a third cup of coffee, or an energy drink or something. Really, we pay attention to what is going on inside your body and kind of what is telling you. So that was really the push for me kind of delving into this world.
Oh, wow. How interesting. Yeah, I think a lot of parents would relate in the sense that their children, it's funny how you bench your own problems, but then when your children have issues, you're like, I've got to figure this out because
Yeah,
I can't bear to see someone else in pain or going through this experience. They're so young. I don't want this for the rest of my or their lives, that sort of thing. So that's interesting. And when you think about the topical solutions to like just getting things going. It's like I don't know if you have this in the States. Do you have Metamucil and things
yeah,
like that? So I just remember I remember my parents going through a stage, or I'm not sure it was my mum or my dad, but they were like their Metamucil was always in the cupboard. They were just always having like a teaspoon or something every morning. And then I
yeah,
heard not too long ago, just about the negative side effects of taking these things all the time. It just
yeah,
ruins your gut. It doesn't actually make things any better at all, right? So if you're giving your children this, if you're taking this yourself, if you're taking some sort of laxative or something just to sort of get the movement at the station, so to speak,
yeah.
there are a myriad of problems, right, that can happen as a result.
Yeah, I mean, your body is designed to know what to do. There are blockages and interferences that happen, and to use something temporarily is fine. I'm not saying don't ever use a Metamucil, don't ever use a Miralax or anything like that. Definitely, it's fine to kind of get things going, but you do have to understand and figure out why is this happening and how can I address it, because there is some sort of disconnect that's going on there with your digestive system, with your gut, some sort of irritant that's happening inside your gut. And so you have to figure out what's causing that, address that, or else it will translate into much bigger problems later on in life. And that's where people kind of get into this zone where it's very, very hard to come back from. They'll develop a lot of diseases and disorders and dysfunction that's much, much harder to come back from. They've spent years of ignoring those symptoms, not really realizing their symptoms. Sometimes we think it's just a sign of getting older. We're like, oh, this is just what happens when you get older, And so I think a lot of times people don't realize that when you have these symptoms, it can be just your gut slowly telling you, hey, things are slowing down, they're kind of breaking down, or let's address it before it breaks down.
Mhm.
And, very often we'll see kind of things are broken down and someone says, how can I get help? Now I've developed XYZ, and that's much, much harder to come back from.
Yeah. So, what are the things that you would be experiencing as I'd imagine this would be a slow creep in terms of problems that start with little signs and then you ignore them and then they get bigger and bigger and bigger. So, what would people be experiencing, do you think, that would be a sign that there's something, not quite right in their gut?
Yeah, well, constipation is a really big one. A lot of
Mm.
people deal with that. But even just things like paying attention to your mood, irritability, paying attention to food sensitivities. This is a big one today. If you see food sensitivities are increasing, or you're like, I've never had sensitivity to this before, and now all of a sudden I can't tolerate it. Even seasonal allergies are a sign of a poor gut function. I didn't realize this. I had seasonal allergies every spring, and I just thought that this is normal. I would always take Benadryl every spring, and I kind of, lived by it. I had it in my car, I had it in my pantry, I had it everywhere because I was just miserable. I didn't realize that when you have poor gut health, you're going to have a heightened response to things around us. Now, just because you heal your gut doesn't mean your allergies might go away entirely. There are environmental factors and other things going on, but you should see a decrease in minimizing a lot of your symptoms and things that we react to. So we have things that we've made very common in today's world. Food sensitivities, food allergies, seasonal allergies. Things that we're seeing growing, where we have all these medications and all these advancements, and yet peanut allergies, egg allergies, gluten allergies, milk, all of these things, shellfish, they're increasing. We're hearing about it so much more now. So we have to kind of think about what is going on, because it's not a Benadryl deficiency, right? It's not like, well, I guess all of us need to be on Benadryl. That's probably what's going on. We have to kind of look at what are we eating? And some things you can control and some things you can't. And that's really the sad reality. We can't control a lot of the things that are happening around us, but kind of paying attention to, should I change my lifestyle because these are the things that are going on? And so, all of those things are a symptom of your gut telling you there is something to address. So little things like that. Eczema is another big one. Eczema is linked to the gut. My son was given a topical steroid cream, a lotion for his eczema. And most people they're just given a lotion, like an oatmeal lotion or something, or a steroid to put on their eczema. But really, that's a gut issue. Your gut is saying that something is going on, and I'm giving you a rash to pay attention to me. So little things like that, I would say, just
Yeah,
be more in
right.
tune with your body.
Yeah, it's interesting you say about the mood and things like that. I mean, what do they say that the gut is like the second brain?
Yeah,
Like there's just there's a whole lot of information and things that we should be paying attention to. And there's obviously a reason why you say I've got a gut feeling or a gut instinct. All those
yeah.
stuff. Like it's not just a colloquialism or something that people just say off a whim. It's actually like an intuitive thing that is sending messages to your brain to say like, fucking listen to what's going on over here. We need to make some adjustments. So, do you think that I think a lot of the hype or a lot of the information around today's health industry is around our environment? So, I mean, there's our external environment, there's our internal environment. So there's things that we can consume on a daily basis, the TV shows, there's the internet, like anything to do with social media consumption, all that kind of stuff. All of
Yeah,
these things have an effect on our mood and things like that. But then we live in an environment now that it seems like almost everything is toxic. Does that make sense? It's like,
yeah,
where do I turn in order to break things down to a simple way of life or a simple way of being that doesn't cost a fortune, that doesn't have to help me upturn everything that I do in life? Or do you
yeah,
think that it's we've strayed so far from normal that like people think that the current fast food, lifestyle is kind of like where we're at? Because even when you go to healthy food, I know I'm asking a lot of questions in one big bundle, but even when you go to healthy food, it's like, oh, well, you can't eat this healthy food because it's not really that healthy. It's stay away from these oils. It's got to be grass fed. It's got to be cooked in. It's got to be local to your area, right? Like there's so many things that you kind of like you drill down. It almost gets to the
yeah.
point where, man, I thought I was eating healthy, but it seems like this shit that I've been shoveling into my mouth for the past 6 months is not really what they say it was. It's actually like, making me worse and not better.
Yeah, and I really try to make it a point not to do that. I really try to simplify the content that I put out, the reels that I make, the advice that I give to people that I'm working with one-on-one, because I see that happen even with my own friends and family. They'll say, "Oh, everything is toxic. Everything causes cancer. I'm just gonna go ahead and eat whatever I want to eat because it
Yeah.
seems like I'm always eating the wrong thing." And so I really try to make it a point not to, I don't want to call them clickbait reels, but try not to make those reels that are going to confuse people more. And there is truth to those reels and the things that they're saying, but I think that it can be really hard for someone who's trying to make all of these changes. And so I always give very, very basic advice and just give really small steps. So a really good first step that I give is stop eating 3 hours before bedtime. That's a really good first step. Even if you're like, I just eating crappy food, this is my job, whatever it is, this is all I have access to. I can only eat the fast food. Okay, let's say you continue eating the fast food, but you've incorporated this one rule, which is 3 hours before bed, I'm going to stop eating. Even better if you can do 5 hours before bed. So if you go to bed at midnight, if you can stop eating by 7 p.m., nothing but water after 7, and then you go to bed at midnight, which I hope you don't go to bed that late, but
Mhm.
let's say you do. 5 hours, that's a really good first step. And then from there, you'll probably start realizing, hey, you know what? I actually feel a little bit better the next morning when I stopped eating 5 hours before bed because my gut had a chance to digest and rest a little bit. I always say, think of your gut as an employee and imagine that employee is just working all hours of the day, like midnight snack. That employee is just working, like typing away, right? Trying to digest all this food that you're giving it. You wake up in the morning, you have a coffee, you pour your French vanilla coffee creamer in there. That is spiking your glucose has started the digestive system and it's trying to process that, but it barely got any sleep because you had a midnight snack, right? You had ice cream or cereal or whatever it is,
Sure.
chips while you're watching. So that employee is overworked. Eventually, that employee is not going to be performing as you would like. It's going to start slipping up, making mistakes, feeling tired, and breaking down. And you're going to say,
Mm.
why is my gut not performing as it should? I used to eat McDonald's all the time and I was fine. I used to eat these things all the time as I was fine. You never gave that employee a break. And so I kind of give that analogy because it's a really simple way of kind of thinking of how our gut is working for us all the time and how things like even just giving it an intermittent fasting schedule is so beneficial and so important to strengthening that employee to come to its better capabilities because you're allowing it to rest. And then when it's well rested, when you do have that breakfast, whenever that is, you are allowing it to be a little bit stronger and better performing. Now, from there we can give it a step two, which is what are you breaking your fast with? What is your breakfast? It contains sugar? Is it the French vanilla coffee creamer? Things like that are going to increase blood sugar, which is going to lead to a crash later. Sugar and those processed ingredients are going to feed the bad bacteria. You're going to feel yourself heightened irritability, maybe fatigue later. You feel yourself kind of lethargic. You're not able to focus as well. So, all of these things play because they feed that bad bacteria. And so, what you break your fast with also matters. What are you having first thing in the morning? I would say the first thing that you have in the morning is crucial to setting you up for the rest of the day and kind of how your gut functions, how your brain functions. So, that would be a really good step too.
Hmm.
From there, if you want to start tweaking, is this grass fed? Is it not? Is this the right oil? Whatever it is, those are all different steps. But I would say, as a good first step, just try to stop eating 3 to 5 hours before bed. And then your second step should be, what am I breaking my fast with in the morning? Is this what I should be pouring into my body when it's so sensitive? It's become so vulnerable. It's been resting all night. It's kind of dehydrated. I haven't given it any water. Should I be giving it this Coffee Mate French vanilla creamer? And I'm just using that one as an example because it's the most
Yeah.
popular. But when look at the ingredients, and if you don't know what those ingredients are, think to yourself, should I be giving this to my poor employee who's barely been sleeping? to break down and digest, and will that result in that gut not performing well later? So kind of think of it that way as well, and I think that will help you make some better decisions.
Mm,
And it's not an all or nothing. It's not a, just because you want to lead a healthier lifestyle, you're never going to have a beer with your friends again. You're never going to have a pretzel or whatever it is. You can, but it's about making better decisions on a day to day so that you can enjoy sometimes having those, for lack of a better word, crappy foods, or maybe
mm,
you're at an amusement park or you're at a birthday party and you want to just forget about health for a moment and just kind of enjoy having that pretzel with the mustard and not worry about what kind of oils are in here. That's okay too. It's also just important for your mental health to do that too sometimes, to just kind of let it go and enjoy that day. So it's when that day just adds up so much and that employee is just overworked that you start seeing that breakdown happen. And so I always give that analogy because it's just a simple way to kind of think about what's going on in the
mm.
gut.
Yeah, it's good advice. It's funny you mentioned coffee, mate. My mum went through a phase many moons ago with Coffee Mate, and she put on a ton of weight, right? So she was getting so heavy, and she was just like, I
Yeah.
can't figure out why I'm putting on so much weight. And uh, I looked at this Coffee Mate for just, I don't know why I went to the cupboard. I go, I don't know. Like she goes, I'm not really eating anything. Anyway, she was just having Coffee Mate, but it was having it like maybe 4 times a day and just adding it into her drink, her coffee, and all the rest of it. Oh my God, that shit is just loaded with calories.
Yeah. I
It's
used to
such a
drink it
toxic
too.
crap. Did you really?
Uh, yeah, in my early 20s, I used to drink Coffee Mate, and that was my favorite one. And it becomes very
Tastes
addictive. And I used to
delicious.
always say, I like my coffee with Coffee Mate and a little bit of coffee in it because I would
Yeah,
just,
sure.
I mean, it tasted amazing to me. And it wasn't like you said until one day I looked at the ingredients and I was like, what am I putting into my body every day?
Crap.
And
Yeah,
I think
that's
a lot of
right.
people don't realize that. Very
Yeah.
rarely do people actually look at ingredients and say, huh, I don't know what that is. I'm not really sure what those ingredients are. I think it's not that common for people to do that. Usually they see the label, it looks nice, it looks pretty, it sounds like it tastes good, and they buy it and consume it without
Yeah.
realizing kind of what they're putting into their body.
It's like reading the headlines only and not the article beneath. You
Yeah,
just what's in front. What
yeah.
would be the main culprit, Alina? Like when it comes to stuff that disturbs the gut the most, is it the sugars? Is it seed oils? Is it a combination of both? What mainly disrupts the equilibrium in the gut, do you think?
Really, it's how far we've stepped away from eating real foods.
Really?
I know we can really fine-tune things and talk about, is this grass-fed, is this pasture-raised, and all of those things are important and they do come into play. But really, to simplify things, we have just gotten so far away from eating actual food that's just grown off the land, right? And so we're so used to eating these processed Franken foods off the shelves that are not even real foods.
Mm,
And so really, if you wanted a simple step, go back to just eating real foods. You can always fine tune kind of your rules later. The things that we talked about, is this grown a certain way? Does this have, whatever it is? But just as a step one, I mean, think of how our ancestors ate and how much they incorporated broths and soups and stews into their diets, and how much we're constantly eating different variety of vegetables and greens and cilantro and dill and parsley and
yes.
sauerkraut and all these pickled vegetables, pickled carrots and cabbage with every single meal.
Mm,
Those pickled vegetables, that sauerkraut is really rich in bacteria like lactobacillus and bifidobacteria, which decrease inflammation and actually light up the receptors in your brain. And so they give you this
wow.
better mental clarity, better mental focus. And when we have a lack of that, we start seeing an increase in anxiety. And think about how much anxiety has really increased and how far away we've diverged from eating foods like that. I mean, that's so uncommon to see kids or teenagers eating pickled foods like that as part of their daily dinners, right? It's not really common. You might see more adults or older adults eating that way because that's how they grew up eating.
Yeah.
But definitely not the kids of today. That's not the norm to eat that way. But in other parts of the world, it is. And so when we look at these other countries that are healthier, and we're always trying to find out, what are they doing? How are they so much healthier? Is it this? Is it that? but really it's because they're feeding their gut those microbes that they need to thrive. And so when your gut is healthy, you're going to have a longer lifespan. You're going to have a healthier mental state as well. And so we wonder why in the US we have so much anxiety all the time. And part of it is social media. I'm not discounting that, but just going back to our food, I mean, even this is really common in the States. My kids picked up on it all. Actually, we were talking about the importance of eating things like broccoli, and my
Mm,
kids said, if broccoli is so good for us, how come in every show we watch, the kids always say, ew, broccoli, I don't like green stuff, ew, I don't
right.
want to eat that. And I said, well, I'm not going to get into it. They're kind of tricking you to make you sick, but because they're small kids. But
Give it
I
time.
mean, that's kind of what it is. I was like, how mature are you for your age? But that's kind of what it is. Think about how much in shows kids are taught that way. Ew, it's green. Ew, broccoli. I hate that, but these foods are really high in polyphenols. Even green tea. How often do you see people just drinking green tea after every single meal? Not really common,
Yeah.
especially not in the States.
Are you over 40, successful but unfulfilled? Do you feel stuck, like you're not truly living up to who you really are? So many high achievers wake up and think, I'm a good person, I read all the books, I listen to all the podcasts, yet there's something missing. Well, you're not alone. I've been there myself quite a few times. And quite frankly, it took a lot of years of really fucking around, trying to figure out what I now call your higher self blueprint, which has enabled me to live a life and make a living with my passions and my purpose. If you're ready to break free from a life that's holding you back, I'm hosting a free training around the 5 pillars of success that will enable you to create a more meaningful, fulfilling, and purposeful life. So click the link in the show notes, and I look forward to seeing you in the training. But for now, let's get back to the podcast.
Even those strains that are linked to better mental health, better focus, and a decrease in things like anxiety and depression, like lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, you
Mm,
find those things in not just sauerkraut and kimchi, but also in yogurts and kefirs. But if you think about even the yogurts that we consume today, it's not the yogurts that our ancestors consumed, right? They
mm,
weren't, it's not like fresh bacteria containing yogurt with maybe adding some honey and some berries to it. That would be the best way if you want to sweeten it up. It's like the Yoplait, the Go-Gurts, the Chobanis, the yogurts that have the artificial ingredients or the sweeteners or even
right.
stevia, that's a big
Flavors.
one that has caught on and people are using that as a healthier alternative. It's not that great for your gut. It's okay for managing blood sugar levels. It's better, has been shown to lead to more stabilization than regular sugar or some of the other sugars. But for the gut, no. So just going
Mm,
back to using honey or even just an organic cane sugar, even just a little bit of that would be okay. Just using real foods instead of these processed foods that we're always chasing, and especially no flavored yogurts, because that's the opposite. It's just going to feed the bad bacteria
yeah.
instead of you doing something good for it. So even just things like that, just going back to kind of think of how our ancestors ate, how simple they were, and they were so much healthier. Going back to that way of eating. So I think we've
Agreed.
overcomplicated things. I think it's just time to simplify it, go back to real food, go back to real eating. And then if you can, take a break from social media a little bit too. That's always good.
Yeah. I think everyone needs a detox. Just get your
Yeah.
phone away from your body for a little while. It's interesting you say about our ancestors. I think if I you've got a European background, right? So
Armenian.
yeah, what'd you say? Sorry?
Armenian.
Armenian, yeah, I got it. So my dad's family is from Italy. So when I think about like even traveling through Europe and thinking about what my nonno ate, there was so many pickled things in the cupboard and
Yeah.
in the fridge. There was eggplant and like you said, sauerkraut and all these things. They would take the seeds out of tomatoes and make their sauce. There was processes for things. And then also whenever there was an ailment, I just remember as a kid that was just like, oh, this is what's going on with Adrian at the moment. They go, well, let's make you this, some vegetables, or let's give you some chili, or let's give you something to warm you up, or something to, make your gut feel a little bit better, or like there was always a strategy behind the foods that they ate that would make you feel,
Yeah.
it would sort of remedy the situation. And so, yeah, I think a lot of people these days are just sidelining all of the the shit that they're eating on a daily basis and not thinking that it's that bad, and then
Yeah.
band-aiding it with all the medications and everything else that goes with it, and then they're not realizing that the two combined are just creating this sort of chemical shitstorm and making life like so much harder for you than it should be.
Yeah.
You touched on a
Yeah,
few things,
exactly.
Alina, that I wouldn't mind just honing in on a little bit. So when you say like you give your employee a break, and you mentioned intermittent fasting, I'm a big fan of fasting, although I've gone through phases where I've done it loads, and it's like consuming maybe 3 or 4 times a week. I'm sort of fasting for, maybe 6 or 12 or 18 hours, and I might do extended fast over a period of time. But I do find that it kind of wanes uh, over a period of time. My body starts to not respond anymore. So going back to
Yeah.
kind of meals that are just breakfast, lunch, dinner, that sort of thing is really really helped. And then I like to insert fasting when I've had a late meal or something, sort of if we go out and we eat pizza, or we eat a lot of dessert or something like that, or I just have one of those dinners where everything's on the table and on the menu, and then you just consume way too much. So the next day I'll kind of like give my body a break, and I say, well, I'll just eat at 2 p.m. today because last night I consumed like 1,000 calories at dinner.
Yeah.
But can we just talk to that a little bit about the strategies and the benefits around giving your body a break and what it does? Like, what does that do to your system and to your gut in particular that helps? Because obviously, when we're talking about gut, we've mentioned mental health problems and anxiety and all of these emotions that come along with it. But we're also incorporating autoimmune disease. We're also incorporating a lot of, you mentioned eczema. I mean, I would imagine that there would be like a myriad of different things that this would aid in terms of solving, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned that after a while, you find the benefits waning a little bit. I always liken fasting to kind of going to the gym and doing a certain exercise. And it's great to do that exercise sometimes, but maybe you're going and doing lunges and you're like, this is amazing. My body's responding really well to it. I feel strong. But after a while, your body's like, I don't want to keep doing lunges. Maybe I want to have a rest day, or maybe I want to do something else. And so fasting is kind of similar to that, where it's really great for strengthening the body and it's needed. But you can do too much of it sometimes. And how long you fast really depends on you. I think that's a common question we get is, how long should I fast? What do you recommend? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what your goals are. I don't know, what you're planning on doing. Certain people are on medications and they can't do extended water fasting because they have to
Sure.
take a medication every 12 hours.
Mm,
Some people have some sort of thyroid dysfunction, or they have some sort of hormonal imbalance or something else going on where maybe fasting for them for longer than certain amount of hours is not recommended. And so while there are certain guides and certain things that we love about fasting, it really does depend on your body and what might be going on with you. And just because you can't fast for a certain time that you want right now, it doesn't mean it's not forever. It just means right now your body doesn't want those lunges. Maybe you're doing something else for now, and then maybe later you can incorporate that. So it's always something that you can work on adapting. But in
mm,
terms of gut health, fasting, we know after a certain hour, it's said somewhere between 14 to 16 hours your body starts going into something called autophagy, and that is when it starts eating up the bad cells in your body. So the cells that are causing the inflammation, that are causing a lot of these disorders and dysfunctions and diseases that we're seeing. Your body goes in like Pac-Man and kind of starts eating up these senescent cells, these cells that are causing the inflammation. So it's really cool when you start feeling that. I don't know if you've felt that effect, but I always feel that switch. It's almost like I've had an energy drink or something. Like it's just this like heightened sense of energy that I get, and I know that my body is just cleaning up so much of the gunk in there, and it's a really cool feeling. Have you ever
mm.
felt that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me it kicks in the longest phase. So if I'm in
Yeah.
typically around like the 48-hour mark, I feel like there's sort of a new wave of clarity, and there's a heightened sense of alertness and the energy and all that kind of stuff. I used to laugh about it, Alina, because I used to go, I know why people talk about the energy boost is because your body's telling you to go and fucking hunt for a some animal because it's just starving. But I know
Yeah.
now that it's yeah, it's definitely something is switching within the body. And I have read more about how the brain starts to fire and starts to burn on more fat and energy like that. And obviously, fat's got what, 9 calories per gram. A protein or a carbohydrate's only got 4. So you are utilizing a lot more energy within the body. So yeah, definitely have experienced that for sure.
Yeah, and I sometimes if I'm fasting like 48 hours like you said, I'm just feel so energetic. I mean, I wake up in the mornings like I've had a Red Bull or something. I just
Mhm.
feel and I kind of annoy my husband. I'm like, "You don't understand how much energy I have." And he's like, "I get it." I'm like, "No, I'm all I've had is just water and sea salt and some unflavored electrolytes and I feel like I'm on fire. Like I can take on the world." And he's like, "Oh my God, it's 7 a.m. I don't want to hear this right now." But
Shut up.
it's just amazing what happens in the body and kind of how you get used to feeling sluggish also, right? I think when you fast, you realize, oh my God, this is amazing. Is this how we're supposed to feel all the time? Because we kind of get used
Mm.
to feeling lethargic all the time, and that kind of becomes the normal. And there's so many social media memes and things about, needing a coffee, an afternoon coffee, and then you go out with your friends and you're having a coffee and you're just always having these synthetic boosts of energy because your body is not keeping up enough, and then you're late night binging shows and things, and so you're not allowing your body to rest. And when you actually give it that rest, and now you can focus on tasks because it's not focusing on digesting all that food, you're like, oh my
Right.
God, where did all this energy come from? I didn't know that I can just produce this on my own. I didn't know that I don't need all of that, the energy drinks or whatever it is that people are,
Mhm.
consuming and kind of getting used to. Your body is capable of producing it on its own. You just have to allow it to. You just have to stop feeding it crap and allow it to rest
Yeah,
a little
that's right.
bit, clean up
I,
a little bit, and
I
it'll
think
it'll perform a lot better.
I agree. For me, Alina, the mental switch from almost like the disassociation to how much I need food was probably one of the biggest mindset shifts that I have experienced when I started to do fasting. So I come from
Yeah.
like in my youth and still now, like I train at the gym and I lift weights, but my philosophy in my bodybuilding days when I was competing was you've got to eat every 3 hours. It's got to be shit tons of protein. Otherwise, like my body will go into some sort of, I don't know, like breakdown if I didn't eat on the 3 hour mark, right? And I was cannibalizing
Yeah.
muscle and things like that. But as soon as I broke that association to needing to eat all the time, it's a game changer. It's a mindset shift that even now I feel like, oh, I've got a busy day at work. I've had a good breakfast, but I just can't get to a lunch or whatever. And it might extend from whatever breakfast at 8 a.m., but then it could be 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And I haven't eaten, but I don't feel like, man, if I don't eat, I'm just gonna, like we've got a saying
Yeah.
in Australia where you could eat the ass out of a low-flying duck. It's like you're that hungry. I could eat the horse and the jockey, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things where I just don't have that same hangry kind of feeling. I can work through those emotions of just needing to eat or that sort of, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like that kind of like real angst that you have about
Yeah.
waiting for your next meal. Like even that's 50% of the problems, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And we hear that so much, that hangry term. And that's really, like you said, when you start incorporating just a healthier lifestyle and even fasting and paying attention to what you're eating and kind of limiting the processed ingredients, and you stop feeling hangry. I remember, even now, where my husband will ask me, "Do you want to have dinner?" It's kind of a weird time, and I'll say, "I don't know. I can eat or I can not eat. Whatever you guys want to do." And he's like, "What do you mean you can eat or not eat? Aren't you hungry?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm a little bit hungry, but I could also just not eat and continue fasting until tomorrow." And he's like, "What are you
Yeah.
talking about? I need to eat in the next 30 minutes. Like, why are the kids
Well,
so slow putting on their shoes? I want to get out of the house."
yeah.
And so, he's on a different wavelength, so he hasn't incorporated that yet, but it's a very, very freeing feeling. And I come from a history of binge eating, so I definitely know being a slave to food and not understanding, kind of being chained to having to eat foods. That's how we feel. We feel like we have to eat these foods.
Mm,
You feel down, you feel stressed, you go and you eat cake and ice cream to make yourself feel better. We're kind of taught these things, right? Like it makes you feel better. Or if you go
yeah.
to someone's house, you feel like if it's a birthday, you have to eat the cake. You don't have to eat it if you don't want to. You can still eat it. I'm not telling you don't eat it, but you have a choice. You're not chained to these foods. You don't have to eat those things. And I think once you start feeling better, you start realizing, I kind of don't want to go back to feeling crappy anymore. I kind of like this feeling, And then sometimes when you
Absolutely.
have those slip ups and you do feel like that the next day, you're like, I don't want to feel like this anymore. I'm actually really happy feeling how I've been feeling before. And so I think that changes. It's good to have those slip ups sometimes because it reminds you of how you used to feel. And you're like, I kind of don't want to go back to that anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. I think once you have a taste of what good feels like, then you kind of go, well, I just want more of that. And then you realize that you can see the patterns that have been shaping your decisions and your mood and your feeling and your look and all that sort of things up until this point. And then you can undo all of that slowly but surely. So I like what you said before about you don't have to be militant about it. You can have sort of like an 80-20 rule. 20% of the time I can go off the rails, and then but 80% of the time I'm right on track again. So I think that's a really
Yeah.
good practical, like if I've got kids, I mean, my kids are older now, but like you have to be flexible. Like there has to be times where you're like, man, there's just nothing that I'm going to get in my system or the kids' system unless it's this food at the moment. So it's kind of like deal with it, and then I can work
Yeah.
through that, another time. At the beginning
Yeah.
of the conversation, you talked about wanting to figure out what was going on with your son, and then you wanted to test and do labs at any moment and things like that. Can we talk to that a little? Because I guess people might be listening to this saying, look, that's fine. I can understand. I've got some gut issues. I can see that there's some practical steps that I can take in order to mitigate some sort of health problems. But really, like I feel for me personally, I'm at a stage where I've done all the things and I feel like there's still that like 10% that I can't quite figure out what's going on. So
Yeah.
is that where testing comes in? Is that where you really need to know exactly, what your blood work is or what's going on in your body?
Yeah, exactly. So everyone that I work with one-on-one, I always run a stool test on them. It's a requirement I have. I won't work with someone one-on-one without a stool test, and they mail it to you, and then you send it back to the lab, and then I get the results, and you get the results also. But without knowing, that stool test is really the best way to see kind of what's going on in the gut. Without running that, we're just guessing. It's kind of we're swinging at the piñata blindfolded and we're
Mm.
hoping we hit it with maybe some, I don't know, fasting or probiotics or kimchi or whatever, the things that we talked about. But like you said, sometimes someone's like, but I'm doing all of those things. How much more can I fast? How much more kimchi can I eat? I'm doing all those things and I don't feel 100%. And so that's really, I think, where why stool testing is so important also. We also spend so much money on supplements and we don't even know if we need those supplements. Like we're like, oh, this person said this supplement is amazing. This is so good for your gut, this probiotic. I'm like, but do you need those probiotic strains? Is that something you're missing in your gut? And like, I don't know. Well, wouldn't you rather spend a little bit of money on a test and see exactly what you're missing and maybe exactly what you might have an overgrowth of or some sort of imbalance of? Address that and then buy the right supplements instead of hoping to buy I don't know, whatever something you saw, which I'm guilty of. Don't get me wrong. Some of those ads are really good. My husband's like, you don't need that. I'm like, this is a really good ad. This person's selling me on all these things,
Yeah.
And he's like, you're the weakest customer. You fall for all of them.
Yeah.
But we tend to do that. We turn a blind eye to swiping our credit card or putting it in for supplements we'll see. And then when it comes to testing, people always second guess it. Oh, I don't know if I want to spend that much money on testing myself. I'll just spend a couple $100 on supplements, the next protein powder, the next collagen powder. This person said I need colostrum. This person said NED. This person said glutathione. I should be taking this magnesium. This is zinc, has 7 forms of zinc. Great. What are you missing in your blood though? Have you ever tested that? Is that not important? We tend to turn a blind eye to that. So my recommendation is test, spend that little bit of money on the testing. Let's figure out what's going on. And your doctor can also order tests for you. Sometimes we forget that. You know, you can push them a little bit and say, I really want these tests.
How much are
Um,
they really though, Alina? Like, what are we talking in terms of dollars? Are you over 40, successful but unfulfilled? Do you feel stuck, like you're not truly living up to who you really are? So many high achievers wake up and think, I'm a good person, I read all the books, I listen to all the podcasts, yet there's something missing. Well, you're not alone. I've been there myself quite a few times. And quite frankly, it took a lot of years of really fucking around, trying to figure out what I now call your higher self blueprint, which has enabled me to live a life and make a living with my passions and my purpose. If you're ready to break free from a life that's holding you back, I'm hosting a free training around the 5 pillars of success that will enable you to create a more meaningful, fulfilling, and purposeful life. So click the link in the show notes, and I look forward to seeing you in the training. But for now, let's get back to the podcast.
well, not much. You know, the stool test is about $499 US. So it's really not much to have a stool sample in terms of think of how much you spend on just supplements and probiotics. You're like, this probiotic is 80 bucks, you know, oh, colostrum, that's another 85. I bought that. It's not working. Okay, now
Yeah.
I'm buying this, you know. You've already made up that $500 and then some and you still
Easy.
don't feel well. So, it's really not much just in terms of let's see what's going on. And that's just a one-time cost,
Mm. I
that
reckon
stool
you could
test.
go into most people's supplement cupboard, where you've got all the leftovers and remnants of shit that you bought. I reckon
Yeah,
they'd be $1,000 worth of shit, like just sitting in the cupboard at
at
any
least.
time anyway.
At least. Even protein powders are really expensive.
100%. Yeah.
You know, and think of how
50 bucks
often
a
we
kilo.
buy just things and then we go, oh, this is expired already. I didn't even use it. I mean, how often does that happen? It's just money down the drain.
Hmm. So what's the stool test going to tell you?
It's going to tell us what kind of bacterial strains you have in your gut. So if you have an overgrowth of bad bacteria, it can even show some parasites. That's another one that's been trending lately is parasites.
Yeah, big
You know, there's all these, yeah, parasite protocols and things that are trending. I'm seeing a lot more of it. Um, while I do think that that needs to be addressed, a lot of people don't realize that certain bacterial strains like H. pylori, which is a really important one. It's a bad bacteria, kind of an invasive one. I always say H. pylori kind of holds the door open for parasites to walk through. And so if you're not addressing H. pylori, you're not testing the stool, and you're just trying to treat the parasites, that door is still held open. And so you might kill off those parasites, but you might not kill the H. pylori because it's a different protocol. And so, you know, it might kill some of it, but H. pylori is pretty stubborn and pretty smart.
Yeah, what is
I know
it?
it's
Can you tell me briefly what the H. pylori is?
yeah, so they're bacteria. And they're super invasive and they're very smart. So if you're doing, let's say, not the right approach to kill them off,
Hmm.
they'll sense that you're trying to kill something in there and they'll go hide in the gallbladder. They might hide in your liver.
Wow.
And so they'll kind of move away into other organs to avoid being found. I mean, how crazy is that? So it's very, very important that you treat certain bacteria according to the proper protocol, things that I might have in place or that another practitioner or your doctor might have in place. Well, your doctor probably is just going to give you antibiotics, but um, it's important to address it properly and in order and to kind of know what you're doing. Even parasites or glutathione, that's another really popular one. Glutathione is wonderful, but if you don't have your detox pathways open, then you're just kind of recirculating those toxins, and a lot of people start feeling unwell on glutathione.
Mm.
And the reason for that is because your lymphs might be clogged, right? If you have like puffiness under your armpits or behind your knees or things like that, these can be signs that your pathways are clogged. And so you're trying to get rid of these toxins, but they're just recirculating because they have nowhere to go. And so it's important to know what you're doing. You got to open up those detox pathways, do the dry brushing. Saunas are really, really wonderful. Saunas are such an underrated healing tool. I mean, if you have one at your gym, make it a point to use it every time you go to the gym. If you have one in your home, even better. I don't have one in my home. I use the one at my gym, but it is such an underrated healing tool. It actually also helps with things like mental clarity and just reducing inflammation. And sauna releases something called heat shock proteins, which kind of act like autophagy. They kind of go and
Yeah, really.
break up those senescent cells. So sauna is really, really important, and it's such a powerful tool. And a lot of us have a gym membership, and we usually have a sauna there. So go use your sauna. That's another great way to kind of get those toxins out as well through the sweating. So just know what you're doing. I think that's really important.
Mm. Yeah, it sounds like that if you were taking a particular piece of advice and it was only some of the parts, then
Yeah,
you could just reintroduce, like you said, some things opened up the door or a pathway to get into parts of your system, but because you've kind of like broken the seal, so to speak, it seems like it could just permeate through the rest of your body. I remember. There was a saying that I was looking into activated charcoal. This is going back many years about
yeah,
binders and bits and pieces like that. I don't know who said it. They said death begins in the colon, right? And there was some like I don't know, probably Pareto or Aristotle or some shit like that. It was some ancient guy that was saying death begins in the colon, and that stuck with me sort of 15 years ago. But I was on this path back then, which was like
yeah,
colonics and just doing sort of like bowel flushes and things like that, which
yeah,
again is some solution to a degree, but it wasn't really solving a lot of the issues that I had, which was certain intolerance to foods and eliminating certain things out of my diet on a regular basis. So, yeah, I think the stool testing is definitely something that I'm going to have to look into here in Australia to see who and whereabouts I can kind of get my hands on that because I think that'd be
yeah,
pertinent information. You could make some really key adjustments right there, and then your whole I don't know. I'm really big at the moment, like heading into my late 40s. I'm really big on vitality and just exuberating health and
yeah,
mental clarity and all of those things. Like that's kind of, I think I can handle the physical aspect of it, going to the gym or doing exercise. Like I'm always like really active in that respect, but I want to be very sort of clear in the mind,
yeah,
but also feeling like the world's hard enough as it is when it comes to running your own business, having children, all the things, money problems, all that kind of stuff that comes with life anyway. So I want to be able to deal with that in the best way that I possibly can. And I
yeah.
think that this whole sort of, mind gut connection is, I don't know, I feel like it's a key to life.
There's something there, huh? Uh, yeah, we always say that the gut is like a second brain, but in actuality, the gut talks to your brain more than your brain talks to your gut. And so it's really
Exactly.
your gut that's telling your brain how to act and what to do. I mean, the brain is very interesting because I always joke around that it's not as smart as we think it is sometimes
Yeah.
because it's your gut kind of telling it what to do. And you can also kind of manipulate your brain, right? If you're like, I'm amazing, I'm going to be so great, I'm successful, I'm healthy, I'm going to go for a run, I'm going to go on that marathon. Your brain's like, all right, this is what we're doing, this is our
Yeah.
life, right? But you can also go the opposite way. And so it's really what you feed your brain is how it performs. We always think the brain is kind of like the center and
That's
it
right. That's
controls
right.
the way that our body behaves, but it doesn't. It's not
Yeah.
as powerful. We kind of tell the brain how we act. If you're like, yeah, I suck, my job sucks, life sucks, this is so stressful, it's kind of going to say, all right, I guess this is kind of how our life is. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
really,
You're
it's
so
really,
right, though. I think your gut,
yeah,
your body sends more signals to the brain. It's almost like when you mentioned the employee before, it's like the brain seems to be more of the employee of like
Yeah.
what the body tells it to do. So when I'm sort of working with in my workshops and working one-on-one with people, I just go like, who's the master of your mind? Is it you, your brain, or is it something higher than the brain? Who tells, you can tell your brain to tell your finger to move, but who's telling the brain to tell the finger to move? I kind of think of that as a higher version of yourself. And
Yeah.
I think the gut and the heart is leading the way in terms of all of that sensory information in the
Yeah.
body. And I get training your brain to kind of understand the
Yes.
signals and the signs is like probably a key thing in life, right?
Yeah, exactly. Your gut's down there kind of pulling the strings on like the puppet master a little bit.
Yeah, so true. Hey, Alina, it's been great talking to you. Where can people find out more about you and your work and all the information that you're sharing on your socials and things like that?
Yeah, so it's Go Happy Belly, and the website is gohappybelly.com. My Instagram is Go Happy Belly, YouTube, Happy Belly, Happy Life, right? And so it's just Go Happy Belly all around. You can always find me there. Shoot me an email. I'd love to chat with you guys. If you have questions, let me know. I'm always happy to help. I just want everyone to have a healthier gut and a healthier lifestyle.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. I really appreciate you.
Thank
And
you.
I'm glad we got to connect. So look forward to
Me
circling back
too.
sometime soon, okay?
Thank you so much. Have a great week.
My
Bye.
pleasure. Bye now.